Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 30 of Podcast vs. Enemies, a Destiny Massive Breakdown show. My name is Court, and joining me today is my co-host Impetus. St. Kabir is taking this episode off, so he can settle in at his new position at Bungie, but he'll be back in a future episode, as he is just as excited to break down the Kingsfall raid and its compelling weapon rolls as we are. But on to this week. We're going to do our first weapon breakdown redo with the Dares of Eternity refresh perk pool and its new origin trait. Impetus, hope you're doing well. And who are we thanking this week?
I'm doing great, Court. Thank you for asking. We are thanking some reviewers. We have 2 reviews showing up on Chartable from Brandon the Bard and Robert M3. Thank you guys so much for your kind words, and we will see you on Neomuna. Just as a reminder, you can send us all kinds of feedback directly to any of our socials or via the Destiny Massive Breakdowns Discord server. Any kind of feedback will help with the trajectory of the podcast and how we present breakdown builds, activities, and much more for all kinds of Destiny players. So do not hesitate to reach out if you've got questions or ideas. We are all happy to talk Destiny. And in regards to Chartable, that is the site we use to aggregate our podcast reviews, but that will take a little bit of time if you are not in the US and you are wanting to leave us a review. So if you do want to hear us thank you relatively quickly after giving us a review, you are welcome to send that over to any of our DMs on our socials, and we'll try and get that thank you out closer to when you give us the review. And as always, we want to extend a special thank you and appreciation to everyone that supports this show, whether that is downloading and listening, discussing it in the Discord server, or supporting us via Patreon. We see you and we love you guys. Thank you so much. All right, show outline. It's going to be a very simple, straightforward one today. We are doing a re-breakdown of the Dares of Eternity weapons because they have been touched up and added to the crafting system this season. So some new stuff to cover, also some old stuff to go over again in light of the changing sandbox, but that is what we are focusing on. Court, got any housekeeping for us? Any changes?
Yeah, 2 things of note, since there's been a lot of hotfixes and changes since the start of the season. So I actually discussed Tempest Strike getting a buff, or getting the buff from Combination Blow. That was actually not intended and was fixed in the latest hotfix, which is 6.2.0.2 on the 1st of September. So you'll be getting no damage buff from if you stack up Combination Blow and you use Tempest Strike, and there's been various cooldown changes as well with Tempest Strike to make it its own melee, a kind of ranged melee thing. So perhaps more importantly is that the resilience bugs, nerfs, whatever you want to call them, for Arc, Warlock and Titan have been fixed. So if you weren't aware, the first week and a bit of the season, Arc, Warlocks and Titans could not, unfortunately couldn't go into the new raid, the Kingsfall raid, which was quite a shame, especially, for Titans and their Thunder crashing. So that's all been fixed. You can join the Hunter squad with the buffed up resilience values. So yeah, just those 2 highlights to report for this episode. We'll start things off with what we did in Destiny last week. I'll kick things off. Busy week for me, pretty busy. Doing my triple clears of Kingsfall, on top of jumping in and helping some runs. Just helping some friends out, some of the community members on Massive Breakdowns, just to get their runs in. It's a new raid. Everyone was excited to jump in and do them. And I have yet again been chasing after the collective obligation. I did my 3 Rolk checkpoint clears last week. I'm definitely feeling the quote, guiding others to a treasure I cannot possess at this point, as some in the raid group that I've been in, they've been getting their 2nd or 3rd collective obligations, so I'm certainly feeling it, but I'm going to keep persevering, because I know collective obligation got a glow up very recently, so I do want to get that into my Void build. Impetus, what have you been up to?
Yeah, so been trying to do some King's Fall runs. Was able to get my regular group together last night, and then the servers shut down. So didn't get to do didn't get to finish. Didn't get to go for that red border chest, which is fine. Hopefully we'll get in a few more runs at reset tomorrow. But yeah, in the meantime, been running through Gambit. We've had double rep this past week, so been working on that. Did grab two great PVE rolls of the new Gambit weapon. That is the Void Pulse Rifle, Adaptive Pulse Rifle, yesteryear. So very excited about that. I'll talk about those when we get around to covering yesteryear in a future episode. And then, of course, been running a bunch of Dares of Eternity. Got to get these weapons unlocked for crafting. So that has been it's not as fun as the first time. I'll be honest. The activity's been around for a year, so it's definitely kind of lost its luster. But of all the activities to farm, I guess it's the most enjoyable. I think it's better than like Wellspring or Containment or any of the other ones that we have to do over and over again for stuff. So it is nice just running around blowing stuff up and listening to Star Horse yell in my ear. So
I think if you get the heavy weapon bonus every round, that makes a difference. I know, like we've all been crafting our various heavy weapons. There's been a lot of heavy weapons recently to craft, so I've been. Well, I completely agree with you. It's we're going back into some content that we've already done a million times over. What 9 months ago.
yeah,
So it could be a bit of a slog, but I appreciate the little heavy bonus you get, guaranteed if you can do the jump.
yes.
For the second round, and it's a bit of an RG for the third round, but well appreciated for my heavy crafting.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it feels faster once you have the Star Horse favor. So could be worse. Could definitely be worse. I've also been working on Arc Warlock, trying to figure out all the ins and outs of that sandbox. Definitely my least played element for Warlock. So I did get a great roll of Fallen Sunstar, which is the new exotic armor piece for Warlock. So I've been working on a build for that. That seems pretty interesting. I've been continuing to play with Getaway Artist and tweaking that build. It's starting to feel like I'm only really using it to make myself amplified on demand, although it is nice to just have a little arc buddy floating around and pointing out where enemies are, although I'm finding that out quite quickly in in-game PvE as they're killing me. So hopefully we'll see some changes made to that at some point in the future, but yeah, still playing around with Arc 3.0 for the Warlock and not having to worry about having zero resilience and higher difficulty content. So, all right. We'll have to ask Saint what he's been doing, although he's definitely been working at Bungie. He won't be able to tell us everything he's been doing in Destiny 2 last week when he comes back to the show, but we'll be able to ask him what he did outside of work, presumably playing King's Fault. But we're going to move on to our weapon breakdown here. So we'll start with our origin trait, as that has now been added to the Dares of Eternity weapons. This one is called Hot Swap, and the text states that switching to this weapon while you are damaged strongly increases its handling for a short duration. Swords gain increased charge speed, guard resistance, and guard endurance instead. The technical details here, it is plus 30 handling to your weapons for 4 seconds when you are damaged. It works everywhere, which is fantastic. And just for this season, we do have an artifact mod that will boost the effect of this. That is Bottomless Bounty 1. And it just states that it doubles the effectiveness. We were just talking about this before we started recording. We're not sure what exactly is doubled here, whether or not it's just the handling that goes from 30 to 60, whether the time is also increased from 4 seconds to 8 seconds, but something is doubled, and we'll need to do some testing to figure out what exactly it is, so that will go on your helmet, that Bottomless Bounty 1 artifact mod, if you want to boost your hot swap. So this is now showing up on all new random rolls and, of course, your crafted versions of the Dares of Eternity weapons. And, a boost to handling is definitely helpful. Swapping to a weapon when I'm damaged is very much a situational thing. It will depend on the weapon. Probably not as huge for, say, primaries, as those don't tend to be quite as strong in in-game PvE, but for our special and heavy weapons here in Dares of Eternity, that could very well be useful. So, all right, let's get into our weapons. I'll start things off with Pardon Our Dust. That is the kinetic lightweight frame breech loading grenade launcher. This was the only weapon that saw a change in 3 of the 4 columns for the perk pool. Remember, we did have a few perks removed and a few perks added in columns 3 and 4, although Partner Dust also lost concussion grenades in column 2, so that will no longer roll or drop on new rolls of this. We previously recommended blinding, spike grenades, auto-loading holster, and then various perks in column 4. Some of these have changed. So in column 3, what we lost were pulse monitor and ensemble, and we gained steady hands and stats for all. Again, auto-loading holster is still there. It's still the most convenient perk for column 3, so we haven't really changed our recommendation for that. In column 4, though, we did lose some big ones. Danger Zone and Wellspring were removed, and Turnabout and Pugilist were added in. Danger Zone was my personal favorite for column 4, so to see that gone, especially now that this weapon is craftable, is kind of a big blow for me. I love pairing that perk with blinding grenades to get the increased area of effect for blinding. So, what are we recommending now? Auto-loading holster, again, still by far the best perk you can have in column 3. Ambitious Assassin is still there. It is, of course, tweaked. I should say it got buffed with the start of the season. So if you were looking to craft a spike grenade roll, you could consider Ambitious Assassin. It depends on how well you're able to slay out. As for column 4, Turnabout and Pugilist are 2 new ones. Pugilist could be interesting for a melee build. I'm not sure if a breach-loaded grenade launcher is going to be the best option there. Turnabout, again, on a kinetic weapon is very, very hard to justify when the match game modifier is on. You pretty much need to have adaptive munitions in another column to really make that perk worthwhile. Adaptive munitions is not on Pardon Dust, so I'm not going to consider that at all. You still have Vorpal Weapon, you still have Demolitionist, you still have Rampage, and Adrenaline Junkie here. I think for a Spike Grenade build, any of those perks are going to be fine. Vorpal probably could be useful if you're trying to hit majors and bosses. Rampage, maybe you can get up to the higher stacks. Again, you probably need to put on Rampage spec while that's still a separate thing, even though that will be added in the future. Adrenaline Junkie, probably the safest play here for a spike grenade build. For blinding grenades, this is kind of where things get a little bit harder. Auto-loading is going to be huge, but there really isn't a useful perk anymore in column 4. Again, with Danger Zone being removed, you really only got damage perks. Turnabout, again, could have been nice if Pardon Our Dust was not kinetic, but alas, it's not going to take too much of an advantage against going against shields when match game is present in those activities. Yeah, it's really going to, for me, it's probably going to be Demolitionist, but if you're trying to think of something to craft on a Pardon Our Dust, this is where things get tricky. Right now, you only have 1 perk in each column on your crafted weapons, and for me, previously, a real benefit of having blinding grenades on these breach-loaded grenade launchers is that I know I have a damage grenade as my second option in the magazine, right, when I get a random roll. So I always have just kind of a multi-function weapon. But on crafted, I only get blinding if I choose to craft that. So I need to have a really strong utility option. And I'm just not sure with this weapon in particular, when I don't have a utility perk in column 4 to pair with blinding and auto-loading, if it's worth it to craft it. So I would say if you are hoping to craft this, I would probably lean towards spike grenades. If you're someone who is new, if you're playing Dares of Eternity for the first time, you just joined Destiny 2, this would be a good option for a solid blinding grenade launcher crafted version. That could definitely, it's a strong tool to have in your kinetic slot for sure. I won't deny that. But if you're somebody who's already had several blinding grenade launcher rolls, especially if you get a random roll with like blinding and spike, auto-loading and demo, which I got to drop for me last night, I just masterwork that, and I don't really feel like I should craft this because I can't craft a roll that is going to be better than that by having both blinding and spike on that random drop. I've got the hot swap origin trait, so there's really nothing else I can do to top that. So if you're somebody who's looking at this and thinking, well, I've already got a few random rolls of this and they're pretty good, how can I make a crafted version better? I don't think you can right now. Until we get the option to have a second magazine on our craftable rolls, you're probably better off with the random roll, just doing double duty, having both the damage perk and that utility from blinding grenades. So Again, auto-loading holster, demolitionist, blinding or spike. That's the role that I'm looking for. That is kind of the role that we recommended the first time we covered Gears of Eternity weapons. So not much has changed there. In terms of your barrel, quick launch, smart drift control, still going to be the go-tos there. So that is our review of Pardon Our Dust. I'll pass you on to Court for Wastelander.
Yeah, Wastelander M5, which is the kinetic lightweight frame shotgun. Again, just a reminder of the frame bonus. Superb handling, move faster with this weapon equipped. Passively grants plus 20 mobility and also increases the forward movement speed by 6.25%. A little reminder of what was removed and added. In column 3, we've got Ensemble and Dual Loader. Those are now gone, and in their place has been added our Air Assault and Pugilist. For column 4, Harmony and Adagio, they have been removed, and Fragile, Focus, and Vorpal Weapon are now in their place. So I know from the I wasn't there for that episode, but Adagio was one of the perks that you recommended, Impetus, for one of the builds. So we won't be featuring that build for this one, for Wastelander. And again, just a little kind of reminder of the stats for Wastelander. It's pretty middling. It's just kind of really average. I suppose jack of all trades but master of nothing. Reese Walker and Reckless Endangerment are really its only non-sunset competitors. Again, generally speaking, Reese Walker is the superior weapon at base stats. However, with the added hot swap trait, origin trait, you can bump up that handling. Again, if you're going for that handling, hot swapping build, which you can perfectly go for this, for reasons I'll get into very shortly. We aren't going to change these sort of highlighted barrels and magazines for Wastelander. So again, from the previous episode, small bore or corkscrew for the stats, full choke if you're running with 1-2 punch, and assault mag for the RPM, or tac mag for the reload and extra shell. Onto the perks. Again, you'll notice some favorites. Pugilist is here as a brand new perk. Lead from Gold and Slide Shot are from the previous breakdown. A little information kind of pivot regarding Pugilist. Special weapons grant 20% to your melee energy. For primaries and heavies, that is 10%. Other special weapons, including glaives, trace rifles, and grenade launchers, also get that 10%. So dealing on top of all this, you also get, when you deal melee damage, not just a kill, but just any sort of damage, you also get that 35 plus handling for 3 seconds. So you can really stack up on the handling stat, really maximize it out if you are going for that hot swapping. So stack that on top of the origin trait. For column 4, again, 1-2 punch and trench barrel, and also Vorpal Weapon as one of the new perks that was added in. Again, Adagio is not present. Masterwork, really just range. Range is always the sort of go-to for shotguns and PVE. Might change for, Season of the Arc. You can get a little bit more closer with some of the Arc synergy. But we'll see when we get to Grandmasters. And for the weapon mod, major spec for elites, mini-bosses, and champions. Shotguns are really ideal for, your sort of mini-boss and champion deletion. And one of the builds that sort of is a hybrid of what you recommended last time, and that is Slide Shot and 1-2 punch. So, fantastic pairing when used with Sentinel Titan, Shield Bash, Burning Fists, Div Combo. Alternatively, what I'm probably going to look for is swap out Slide Shot for Pugilist. So use Pugilist to kill any trash ads, get your charge melee. So, for example, Shield Bash. Get that back and have the gameplay loop of 1-2 punch into melee charge melee. Base melee or charge melee into recharge your melee through Pugilist back to 1-2 punch and it just keeps looping in. So this is actually an ideal opportunity for me to sort of pivot even further down the rabbit hole and just talk about 1-2 punch and how that interacts with some charged melees. I know there's been a lot of confusion. There's been some kind of like, how does this work for various different charged melees? So when it comes to base melee, it just works. It always works for base melee. So when I talk about base melee, it's an uncharged melee. For certain charged melees, so that's your like anything that you'll use your melee to do something, whether that's like throw a shield or a throwing knife, that sort of deal. It has to be a contact melee. Now, I'm going to list some things you're thinking, that's not a contact melee. And I know, I've spent a lot of time, looking at how all this interacts with 1-2 punch, and it confuses me. So for Hunter, when we talk about charge melees, how it does synergize with 1-2 punch, combination and disorienting blow, all throwing knives, including stacking with Arthas's Embrace and Smoke Bomb. So those two latter ones, you wouldn't consider as a contact melee.
Throwing knife? Oh my gosh.
Yep. For the purposes of 1-2 punch, you can stack that on top of 1-2 punch's damage increase. Generally speaking, it's 200% damage increase for 1-2 punch. There's a lot more technical detail that I won't go into this episode, but maybe something that we can cover in the future. So hunters that doesn't work on charge melees include the following: Tempest Strike, Quickfall, and the Shuriken Stasis melee. For Titan, they've actually got quite a vast array of melee options, which, I think come to expect with the Titan subclass. So all arc melees work. I have verified that for this season. All solar melees except Throwing Hammer, Offensive Bulwark melee, and the Shield Bash. So not Throwing Hammer and not the Shield Throw. They do not work for 1-2 punch. And for Warlocks, unfortunately not as much as the Hunter and Titan Impetus. All the arc melees do work. That does include the Lightning Ball, which surprised me. Again, it's not a contact melee, but neither is Throwing Knives. And that's it. It doesn't work for any other elemental melees. So not Celestial Fire, not Incinerator Snap, Pocket Singularity, and Penumbral Blast. I do have a handy graphic within my spreadsheets under the Extra tab, which is located at the bottom. It's got all this information about 1-2 punch, and it's how it interacts with various melees. So I know it's not ideal to listen back to how all these how these melees work in an audio form. So if you prefer a visual form, you can have a look on that on my spreadsheets. And again, we'll probably get into a lot more technical detail in a few, end of the season or next season when we get into more kind of deep diving topics in the future. So let's return to the surface from that rabbit hole. So yes, 1-2 punch, pugilist, you can combo together. A really great combo if you're wanting to like completely shred champions. We do have Unstoppable Shotgun for this season. It's really a solid perk to just completely delete those unstoppable champions, and they can be a nuisance. We were doing a Master Wellspring a few hours before we recorded this episode, and they can be a bit of a pain. But that's a solid roll, solid combination there if you want to go down that route. And from the previous breakdown, which I won't go into too much as detail, was the Lead from Gold and Trench Barrel combination, which is the sort of, again, dealing high burst damage against majors. Pellet shotguns did get their damage buff, it'd be a few hotfixes ago now, but I think we're still not sure if shotguns are really still not quite there in terms of the risk/reward when it comes to higher end PVE content. But again, we'll see how shotguns perform in the hands of those that are running arc subclasses. Alternatively, you can swap out Trench Barrel for Vorpal. Again, that is 15% on special weapons if you're going up against any sort of mini bosses and constructs, aka vehicles. And again, I've been mentioning it, we did recommend Subsistence and Adagio as a sort of quote fun pairing, but Adagio is no longer on Wastelander. So if you've still got that build from before we had the perk refresh, keep having fun with that. But unfortunately, you don't have the access to the origin trait. All right, Impetus, what can you say about the very fine weapon, the Battler?
I'd say a lot.
Yes.
Love this bad boy. This is probably my favorite legendary weapon in the game. This one also had a few surprise removals, but definitely some surprise in inclusions. Yes. Additions. That's the word I was looking for. We got there in the end. So, leaving column 3, auto-loading holster, snapshot sights. Auto-loading holster on primary weapons, not really something that I recommend a whole lot. Snapshot sights obviously affects our PvP players a little bit more. Added, pugilist and heating up. Very interesting. Column 4, this is kind of a big surprise here. We have lost Adrenaline Junkie. So, the old recommendation for this pulse rifle was the demo AJ combo, very strong combo, great for primary weapons. That is no longer available. So if you had a random roll of this drop at any point in the past 9 months that Dares of Eternity has been out, I would hold on to that. That is a very, very strong combination for giving your grenade back. Again, you don't have to necessarily be on a solar subclass to make that combo work, which is why it's so helpful. So if you just have a BXR battler for Unstoppable Pulse Rifle this season and you'd like to have some grenade synergies, that demo AJ build will still be nice. You just won't have the hot swap origin trait there. The other perk that was removed was Rangefinder. Again, another surprise, but that's mostly for our PvP players. What was added was Gutshot Straight, that's a new one, and then Incandescent. So we do finally have some Solar 3.0 synergy for this Solar Pulse Rifle, which is fantastic. So we're going to talk about Incandescent a lot here. I do want to just touch on our barrels and mags real quick. This does have a base recoil direction of 70, so again, depending on whether or not you find that to be manageable, when you do go to craft this, you can either choose to add an arrowhead brake or a chambered compensator for that boost to recoil direction. There is also, of course, counterbalance stock as the mod if you want to put that in there. Otherwise, if you do not find the recoil direction to be a problem, fluted barrel corkscrew rifling is going to be great just for those bumps to your stats. In the magazine slot, ricochet rounds is just going to be really helpful for bouncing off of shields, getting that ricochet for hitting enemies around cover. That is extremely useful. Flared magwell, again, if you really need a boost to your reload speed stat, another great option there. When we get into columns 3 and 4, in column 3, well, I guess I should probably start with column 4. Incandescent is definitely going to be my new recommendation. Just fantastic for pairing with your Solar 3.0 builds. They are all strong on all the classes now. And in column 3, we can refine that Solar 3.0 build even further with Demolitionist or Pugilist. So I'll start with Demolitionist Incandescent. That is going to be great for all of your Solar 3.0 builds, regardless of your class. That is going to be exceptional for getting that back even faster. If you've been running young Ahamkara Spine on Hunter, this is going to be the pulse rifle roll for you guys. That is going to be fantastic. Same thing with Warlocks, of course, running Starfire Protocol. Get those grenades back instantly, which is going to be fantastic. The second one that I'm going to recommend you take a look at, again, if you have the materials, go ahead and craft two of these. I'm definitely going to be crafting 2 of these, would be the Pugilist Incandescent roll. So that's going to be particularly strong for Hunters and Titans with your ranged option. Again, a pulse rifle being a mid-range weapon, you can definitely take advantage of that distance with the throwing knives and throwing hammers. Again, with the interesting frame that the Battler has, you will get that really nice stat bump when you're hip firing, so you don't even have to be ADS'd, so that can be very helpful if you're trying to line up that ranged and melee. Warlocks, again, we can still take advantage of it with something like Celestial Fire, but that longer distance that Hunters and Titans have with their solar melees is going to be really nice to take advantage of the fact that this is a mid-range weapon. So Highly, highly recommend grabbing both a demo incandescent and a pugilist incandescent roll. And if you have the crafting materials, go craft both of those. That is going to serve you very well for any Solar 3.0 builds you might be considering whenever pulse rifles have champion mods, which they do this season. Last thing I want to touch on is the blunt execution rounds perk. We can pair pugilist with that. That is going to be a good pairing. Blunt execution rounds is strong. I'm not going to deny that. It is whenever you deal melee damage to an enemy when they are within 15 meters, you will get 100 handling and then 500% damage increase in PVE for 10 seconds or until firing. This will only proc on the first burst of a pulse rifle. So it's that first 3 bullets will have that 500% damage increase. There is a 4-second cooldown after that has happened. So I find this to be just a little too much setup for me to fully recommend this. Like I wouldn't suggest that you craft a roll with pugilist blunt execution rounds. If you get the random roll to drop, definitely play around with it. It sounds like it's going to be very fun. I haven't had this happen yet for me. I haven't gotten lucky with my RNG, but I'm not sure I would recommend crafting this over the kind of general consistency that incandescent gives you on Solar 3.0, but that synergy is there. Again, this does have a really, really solid solar perk pool. For those of you that have been spending a lot of time on Solar 3.0, this weapon is going to serve you well for the time being, and I'm very excited to see the updates. It's a shame that we lost Adrenaline Junkie in Column 4. Again, if you do have a demo AJ roll, an older roll, hold on to it. I think that's going to serve you well. You know, the nice thing with demo AJ is you can be on any other element. And if you've got solar shields and, you know, there's a champion mod for pulse rifles that given season, this is going to do you just fine, right? Incandescent really, really, really takes off once you're running a solar subclass. So that is, I think, the one big downside to running incandescent is when you're, you know, on a void subclass. Spreading scorch is nice, but it's what you can do when you start spreading scorch on the solar subclasses with those fragments that we've been talking about is really when that perk goes to the next level. So all in all, very happy with the changes. It's a shame to see AJ disappear. We did also recommend, I should touch on this before I pass you back to Court, Outlaw Kill Clip kind of just being that bread and butter roll. That's still going to be strong, but again, once you have access to this weapon in the crafting system, you can really focus on those specific, finely tuned perk combos. It's going to really take your solar builds to the next level, whether it's through grenades or melees. So just be aware of that, and happy hunting for the BXR red borders. I have not been lucky. I think I'm sitting at 2 of 5, so hopefully my RNG turns around, and I'm going to turn you guys around to Court.
Yeah, speaking of Solar 3.0 weapon, we have Retrace Path, which is the Solar Adaptive Frame Trace Rifle. No frame bonus here, obviously it's just being an adaptive frame. And this, actually, we didn't lose any useful perks. I suppose if you value shoot to loot for a trace rifle, perhaps, but yeah, this has had some really great glow up potential here. So a little reminder: column 3 Genesis and shoot to loot were removed and added were well-rounded and adaptive munitions. Again, another column 3 perk or column 3 weapon that has adaptive munitions. For column 4 we had disruption break and harmony, and for in their place focused fury. Bit of a strange choice for a trace rifle, having to, you know, hit half the magazine. Maybe useful in orcs, because it's just one big crit.
That's 50 bullets that you need to hit.
Yeah. I mean, if you can hit those shots, you can get that 20%. But honestly, the last but certainly not the least perk that we're going to talk about here, as Impetus was talking about for the Battler, was incandescent on a trace rifle. Great stuff. We'll get into that just shortly, why that's so good. A little reminder, so it joins Hollow Denial, which was the Season 17 craftable trace rifle, if that was Void affinity. We still don't have an Arc or a Stasis legendary trace rifle yet. And in terms of overall stats, Hollow Denial does have a slight edge over Retrace Path. You know, trace rifles are, generally speaking, you know, pretty hard to compare with each other, because you're either comparing it with just one other or an exotic, which isn't very fair. Can't compare it with Agriceptor. So 75 stability, 64 range, pretty low reload with 45, and low handling with 46. But again, you're trying to pair that with the origin trait, that'll bump it up quite high. Hollow Denial does take the edge, slight edge, but now that you've got some quality perks and subclass synergy with the added incandescent, I think Retrace Path definitely goes from low B tier up to S tier. So a little reminder of the barrels and the trace rifles call them batteries instead of magazine. So for the batteries, for the barrels, we've got small bore or hammer forged for the range and stability, and for the batteries, we've got tactical for the reload, range, and stability. Otherwise, you want to go for enhanced just to bump up the magazine. Those are unchanged from our previous breakdown. Saint did recommend one build, which I'll talk about very shortly. But for some highlighted perks, we've got Perpetual Motion, Killing Wind, Feeding Frenzy, Subsistence, and, of course, Adaptive Munitions. Some really great picks there. And for column 4, we've got One for All, Golden Tricorn, Frenzy, and Incandescent. So, again, looking at the selection of perks here, you may be wanting to craft more than just one. You've got potential multiple builds here that you can build on top of Retrace Path if trace rifles are your thing. So for the masterwork, it's really personal preference here. Reload if you're not using Feeding Frenzy or Subsistence. Otherwise, stability and range, they have great utility. For the weapon mod, minor spec is great for trash ads, otherwise major spec if you intend to maximize the damage potential versus elites, mini-bosses, and champions. So the builds here, Saint recommended on the previous episode, Subsistence and Golden Tricorn, which again, it absolutely shreds through enemies. Golden Tricorn is very easy to proc on Solar. For all the subclasses, you've got some great utility, some great damaging grenades and melees on all three classes. So that's 15% for one stack and 50% for two stacks on Golden Tricorn. For the two builds that I'm going to recommend are Subsistence and Incandescent. So you want to watch the world burn as you apply Scorch and Ignitions like nobody's business. So best synergy in Solar, just to really amp up with the Solar keywords. But you can get away using this on another subclass. Ideally, you want to spec into Solar subclass just to really capitalize on all the aspects and fragments that all three classes can get. Alternatively, you could swap out Subsistence with Feeding Frenzy if you're pairing this with another weapon. Again, if you're wanting to spec into handling, you can swap in and out just to capitalize on the fast reload before swapping to another weapon. For build 3, I am recommending Adaptive Munitions plus any other passive damage perks. So we're thinking Frenzy or One for All. Ideal for match game activities or activities with lots of shielded enemies. Trace rifles do rip through shields due to its high RPM and the escalating damage bonus. And if we ever get a trace rifle anti-barrier mod, this may be a very fair utility weapon if you can't afford using Arbalest or Wishender. If you want to use an exotic heavy weapon in its place. So pair this with a passive damage perk to increase this damage boost, which will also be useful outside of ripping the shield. So a nice damage / utility build there. I do have a soft spot for One for All, the enhanced version, which you of course can craft any of the enhanced traits for all the weapons that we're covering on this episode. The enhanced One for All goes from 10 seconds to 11 seconds. Not much, but that one extra second is ideal. Again, I have a little bit of a soft spot for One for All because it's pretty easy to proc, especially in end-game activities, to get that 35% damage increase. Not as much as Golden Tricorn at 50%, but Golden Tricorn might be a little bit difficult to activate and sustain, especially in Grandmasters. Alternatively, Frenzy is just as good. It's 15%, but again, it's got its own kind of passive, consistent, activation period. So Some really great builds there. I'm currently ranking up my retrace path, and I'm looking at the subsistence or feeding frenzy incandescent roll, and I might be making another one just to capitalize on the adaptive munitions and the frenzy or one for all roll. So very excited to use retrace path. I was a little bit sad with the kind of how Hollow Denial felt. I was looking forward to using a Void trace rifle to pair it with Void 3.0, despite the fact it was the season of Solar. But I just wasn't really impressed with how Hollow Denial, despite it being taking the edge with stats. But yeah, Retrace Path has got the big thumbs up from me. So we're gonna head over to the heavy weapons. We have two swords that we're going to cover, which is more than we've ever covered before. Impetus, what can you tell us about Half-Truths?
Yes, Half-Truths is our arc adaptive sword. That is the blue one, as people probably refer to, compared to the purple one, which is the other half. So adaptive frame here. Arc swords are surprisingly crowded field. We got a lot of different options here. I think the two most dominant ones at the moment are probably going to be Bequest, which is dropping from Deepstone Crypt, and that is also an adaptive frame. It is also a stat monster. When we get to a Deepstone Crypt raid weapon breakdown, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but very, very strong weapon. And then, of course, Hero of Ages, which we covered all the way back in our very first episode of this show, which is dropping from the Grasp of Avarice dungeon. That is a Vortex frame that rolls with a pretty spicy perk combo. So definitely some competition here for Half-Truths. It did kind of make a bit of a splash when it first debuted by having the Eager Edge perk in column 4. Unfortunately, the other half came out and stole all of its lunch, but Cord will tell us about that in a moment. So what did it lose and what did it gain? So in column 3, it lost Thresh and added Unrelenting. In column 4, it lost Harmony and added Chain Reaction. So very, very exciting. Again, Unrelenting Chain Reaction was one of the roles that we recommended on Hero of Ages. That sword could also roll Demo Chain Reaction, which was very spicy. So having that on Half-Truths is wonderful. Again, this is the first time we get that perk combo on a craftable weapon. So you will need 5 red borders for the Half-Truths. That is not going to be the case for every Deer's weapon. But when we talk about our blades and our guards, still going to be kind of the tried and true combo there. It's going to be Jagged Edge. We want to get that impact stat as high as possible, and Jagged does help us in that regard. That is a +4 to the impact. And then we're also pairing that with Swordmaster's Guard. Swordmaster's Guard is fantastic simply because it's the only guard that gives us a boost to our charge rate stat, which lets us get to that powered attack quicker. None of the other guards do that. Some of them take away from charge time, which is not what we want. So Swordmaster's Guard, it is with Jagged Edge. In columns 3 and 4, Unrelenting Chain Reaction. That is going to be a really strong arc ad clear combo there. Very, very powerful. The heavy attack for an adaptive frame is an uppercut compared to the Vortex spin. So I think Hero of Ages probably will still be able to do this role a little bit better just because the spin heavy attack will be able to catch more enemies in the blast compared to the adaptive heavy attack. But again, this is craftable, so you can get enhanced Unrelenting and enhanced Chain Reaction, or just really that combo if you have not been lucky with your Hero of Ages drops. So that is the role I am going to recommend. That is going to be very strong. Eager Edge in column 4, it's nice. You could do an Unrelenting Eager Edge. The nice thing about the Hot Swap origin trait is that it will pair with Eager Edge quite nicely. If you do find yourself getting in hot water, you start taking damage and you need to get out of a fight quickly, swapping to a sword with Eager Edge will proc Eager Edge, so you can get out of combat quickly, and you'll also get that boost to your handling, so the swapping to the sword will be faster, which is definitely going to be very nice. But having it in column 4 means you can't take advantage of Chain Reaction, and who doesn't want to take advantage of Chain Reaction, right? So I would still push you towards Unrelenting Chain. That is going to be very fun. You can get up close to those enemies, get that double kill. Unrelenting will proc, give you that 80 HP, which is going to be huge. And remember, if you get a few of the elites or mini bosses in that attack, those count for more, so you'll be able to proc unrelenting quicker if you do kill a major enemy, which will be very nice there. So that is my add clear recommendation for the half truths. We're going to talk about the elusive other half next.
Yeah, so this is the very rare sword. You only need to have one red box in order to craft the other half, which I was very lucky to obtain about 5 chest pulls in, which beats the I don't know how many runs before I managed to get the other half when Dares of Eternity initially came out. So it's I've got some inverse RNG now. But yeah, this is the this is the Void Adaptive Frame Sword. Again, it's the sort of classic heavy uppercut attack when you perform a heavy. Just like Half Truths, it's just the Void version of Half Truths. And yeah, so just a quick reminder of what was removed and added. Not a lot here. The swords don't have a lot of perks to pick upon. So for column 3, we had Energy Transfer has been replaced with Flash Counter. And column 4, we've got Surrounded was replaced by Repulsor Brace. Surrounded on a sword would have been pretty good, but for other reasons that I'll get into, the other half's got a bit more of a dynamic when it comes to other utility. So we'll, yeah. We have a sort of comparison again, like the Void adaptive swords aren't well common compared to Arc adaptive swords. The only other one is Steel Sibyl, which like it was Season of the Arrivals when that was sort of brought back into the game from year 1 of Destiny 2. And other than that, there's not and really other Void adaptive frames. So really you could compare it to other frames, including Vortex, but I suppose that's not really fair to do so. So it stands alone, again, just for the reasons that I'll get into shortly. It's the perks that allow the other half to excel, especially over its Arc's half sibling, with the Eager Edge in the 3rd column rather than the 4th column, and your choice of damage perks in the 4th. It does also have a very interesting combo, which I'll talk about shortly. So for sort of highlighted barrels and mags, or as they call it, blade and guard, again, same combination as Half Truths. You're going to go for jagged or tempered for the blade, and for sword for guard, you want to go for sword masters, which is always the go-to for PVE. For the highlighted perks, again, Eager Edge. It's the speedrunner's go-to perk, but I will also recommend Flash Counter here. For column 4, we've got Frenzy, we've got Whirlwind, and we've also got Repulsor Brace. Vorpal is in here, but again, for a heavy weapon, you're only going to get that 10%. Frenzy's 15%, and Whirlwind does stack up to become 30% at 10 stacks. For weapon mods, Major, Boss, or Taken Spec. So, Build 1 is going to be the Eager Edge plus any damage perk. It's your powerhouse for the speedrunning, and as Impetus mentioned when he covered Half Truths there, to get in and out of danger, Eager Edge is the definitely hot pick here. The second build, which I actually mentioned last episode, I was alluding to, was the sort of fun route when you pair Flash Counter and Repulsor Brace. So a little kind of mini breakdown here. So for the purposes of the Void Sandbox, Flash Counter applies a type of suppression and weaken. That weaken is 20% upon blocking a melee attack within half a second. So you want to purposely get yourself meleeed, and just before they hit you, bring the sword guard up, and which will apply Flash Counter's effects on them. Kill them, and you gain Repulsor Brace's effects of a 45 HP Void Overshield for 8 seconds, or 9 seconds with the Enhanced. You can stack this with your Void subclass directly using Echo of Persistence to increase the timer up to 12 and 13 seconds respectively, and you can refresh this as many times as you want. Although not necessarily a damage build, it remains a very easy and fast way to gain an overshield, something that hunters, maybe not so much now that Gerfalcon's Hauberk is a new exotic for this season, but more so for warlocks who cannot directly obtain a void overshield. They don't have a direct means without having to use repulsor brace, or a hunter with your falcons, or a sentinel friend to provide them with a void overshield. Alternatively, you can use this build to easily gain a void overshield on arc, solar, stasis subclasses. You don't need to be on void. It is its own mini void 3.0 subclass. Flash counter and repulsive brace is a great synergy with each other. So if you want a void overshield on those three classes, arc, solar, and stasis, you can opt for that instead. Alternatively, you can swap out Flash Counter with Eager Edge, and then instead use your Void Sandbox to apply suppression, volatility, and weaken all your enemies to make, and then make the final blow with your sword, and that'll bring up Repulsor Brace's trigger to get that Void Overshield. So yeah, that's two great builds. Eager Edge remains top tier for both swords, but explicitly for the other half because it rolls in column 3. But I don't. I'm currently working on my my other half, but I haven't made my flash counter and repulsor brace, which I do intend to at some point, and I want to have some fun with the synergy, especially on a hunter, and being able to really spec into all the 6 void keywords for using the sword. So yeah, some great picks there. All 6 weapons there. Again, want to go in there, craft. If you want to craft all those, you got to get those 5 recipes, 5 red boxes, or just 1 for the other half. And yeah, hope to see you all in Dares of Eternity as we're grinding it out and popping the box. Sat there for about 20 minutes as we hope we get our BX battlers that I'm trying to get. I think Wastelander and Battler are the only ones that I think I'm still to make a serious dent into those. Any final comments there, Impetus, before we wrap things up for the show?
I do just want to say, in regards to the red borders, it came to our attention this past week. There seems to be a deterministic way to get red borders. Every week there are 2 challenges that are available in the Dares of Eternity. One will offer you a powerful reward that is doing it at least 3 runs of the normal difficulty, although a legend run of Dares will count for more progress. And then the Pinnacle Reward Challenge is getting a score of 250,000 points or higher. It would appear that the reward, the powerful and the Pinnacle Reward, are both going to be red-bordered Dares of Eternity weapons the first time you do this on your account. So whatever character you happen to get those challenges done will offer you a red-bordered Dares of Eternity weapon. And from what I have heard, we've only had this available for 2 weeks. From what I've heard, it appears to be on a knockout system. So if you have already crafted one of those weapons, the red border that drops from either the Powerful Challenge or the Pinnacle Challenge, it should not be one of the ones that you've already crafted, which is not the case if you go and pull in treasure keys from the treasure chest, because I've gotten at least 3 red bordered other halves instead of the BXR Battler red borders that I've wanted. So just be aware that is per account. So the first time you do that per week, the Powerful Challenge and the Pinnacle Challenge in Dares of Eternity, you should be getting red borders. So that should help. That's 2 opportunities to go and get a few of those weapons and make progress towards crafting them. So just want to add that, put that out on your radar. Go play Dares. That's where we're at right now. Go play Dares again.
All right, good to know. Good to know. Yeah, we're going to wrap things up here. That is it for episode 30. If you're expecting a much larger duration for a big number like 30, it's not it. It's just a short but sweet one. Thank you very much for listening. We also want to thank our audio engineer, Mr. Sudden, who we've been promising to give him short episodes for the last few weeks, and you finally got one. We will be back next week with some more weapon breakdowns, and make sure to send Saint all the great vibes while he is currently settling into his new job at Bungie. My name is Court, and you can find me on the Twitter app as Court Projects, and you can find me in Discord, mostly in the Massive Breakdowns Discord server as just Court. You can also find my documentation and spreadsheets and various other community-made applications and spreadsheets over on the Massive Breakdowns website. Impetus, where can we find you?
My name is Impetus. You can find me by that name on Discord and in Destiny, and as Impetus always on Twitter and Twitch. Thank you so much for listening, guys. We will see you next week.